Before I begin, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss any of my personal stories. And please tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing which cities and towns join me here. Now, let me tell you about the day one of my students waited after class, and the words he spoke still echo in my mind. It was late afternoon on campus, long after my lecture had ended. The last bits of sunlight filtered through the tall classroom windows, stretching long shadows across the floor. Most of the students had rushed out to meet friends, grab dinner, or catch their buses. But he stayed. Elliot. Quiet, mature for his age, 21, thoughtful in a way the others rarely were. He sat in the last row, staring at the closed notebook on his desk, as though debating something with himself. I assumed he was simply packing slowly, or maybe waiting for the hallway to clear. But when I erased the last formulas from the board and turned back around, he was still there, just watching me. Not in a bold way, not in a strange way, in a way that felt heavy, intentional, like he had something weighing deeply on him. "Elliot," I asked gently, "is everything okay?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood slowly and walked toward the front of the classroom, each step quiet but purposeful. When he reached my desk, he stopped, took a steady breath, and looked right at me. His eyes weren't nervous. They were determined. "I need to tell you something," he said. My heartbeat lifted just slightly, sensing the gravity in his tone. "What is it?" I asked quietly. He hesitated for just a moment, then exhaled. "I waited because I didn't want anyone else to hear this." The room felt suddenly smaller, warmer. Even the dust in the sunlight seemed to hang still. He placed a hand on the back of the front row chair, not touching me, just grounding himself. Then he said the words that caught me completely off guard. "You're the reason I'm still here." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He looked down for a moment, gathering himself. "You probably don't remember," he said softly. "But 3 weeks ago, after class, you asked if I was all right." I did remember. His eyes had seemed distant that day, his voice quieter, his energy dimmer than usual. "You said," he continued, "you seem tired? Are you sleeping enough?" I blinked. "It was just a check-in." He shook his head slowly. "It wasn't just anything to me." His voice trembled, barely noticeable. "That day, I was going through something serious. I didn't think anyone noticed me." He lifted his gaze, and the emotion in his eyes nearly knocked the breath from my chest. "But you did." The room grew impossibly still. I wasn't expecting that. Not the weight of his confession, not the vulnerability in his voice, not the quiet truth shining in his eyes. "I didn't know how to say this in front of everyone," he said softly. "So I waited." I swallowed. "What happened?" I asked gently, and what he said next shocked me in a way I still feel when I close my eyes. Elliot let out a slow breath, the kind people release only when they've held something inside for too long. "When you asked me if I was okay," he said quietly, "that was the first time someone had said those words to me all month." My heart tightened. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't attention-seeking. He spoke with the calm of someone telling a truth he'd hidden behind careful silence. "I didn't think anyone cared," he continued, his voice steady but fragile around the edges. "My family's barely around. My friends, they don't really look past the surface. And that week, everything felt like it was slipping." He paused. "My grades, my sleep, my motivation, all of it. I felt a chill move through me, not from fear, but from realizing how close he must have been to breaking. I stepped closer, slowly, gently. "Elliot," I said, "you should have told someone." He gave a small, sad smile. "That's the thing. I didn't think I deserved to." The words cut through the room. Quiet, painful, honest in a way only someone unguarded could express. He took another breath, steadying himself. "But when you asked me if I was all right," in this simple, casual voice, I realized something. He looked right at me now. I realized somebody saw me. There was nothing romantic in his expression, nothing inappropriate, just a young man who had been carrying a weight no one else noticed. "You have no idea," he said, voice low, "how much that moment mattered to me." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm glad I asked," I whispered. He nodded lightly. "It kept me going," he said. "It kept me steady. And that night, I actually reached out to someone. I got help." I breathed out slowly, relief washing through me. "That's all I ever want for my students," I said softly. "For you to be okay." He swallowed hard. "I know. That's why I stayed today. I wanted to thank you." My chest warmed, unexpectedly emotional. "You don't have to thank me," I replied, but he shook his head. "I do." He stepped back slightly, giving the moment space, giving us both space. "People think professors teach subjects," he said quietly. "But sometimes," he looked down, then up again, "you teach us that we matter." Silence settled between us, soft, respectful, meaningful. "Elliot," I said, my voice low but steady, "I'm proud of you. Truly." A faint smile crossed his lips. "Thank you. That means more than you think." He picked up his notebook, holding it loosely at his side. Then he said the last words I expected to hear. "There's one more thing I need to tell you." I felt my breath pause. "What is it?" I asked gently. He hesitated, searching for the courage he'd already shown so much of. Then he looked at me with eyes clear and vulnerable. "It's about what almost happened that week." My chest tightened. "What almost happened?" I whispered. He took a slow breath. And what he revealed next shocked me to my core. Elliot's fingers tightened slightly around his notebook, the faintest tremor running through his hand. Not fear, but the weight of choosing honesty. He took a slow breath, exhaling like someone stepping into the cold. "That week," he said quietly, "I almost walked away from everything." Those words sank into the quiet room like stones into water. Not loud, not dramatic, just heartbreakingly true. My breath caught in my chest. "Elliot," I said softly, but he lifted a hand gently. Not to silence me, but to show he could continue. "I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I felt like I was failing at everything. School, work, life, all of it." His voice didn't shake, but the pain behind it was unmistakable. And it felt like nobody noticed. Nobody cared. He swallowed hard, eyes lowering. "But when you asked me if I was okay, it snapped something in me, in a good way." He looked up again, meeting my eyes with clarity. "It made me realize I wasn't invisible." A cold shiver ran through me. I hadn't known. I never imagined a small moment, a single sentence, could carry that much weight. "I'm so glad you're still here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded gently. "That's exactly why I stayed today, because I wanted to say that out loud, to tell you you made a difference, even when you didn't know it." The classroom felt different now, not heavier, not sadder, more real, more human. "You weren't supposed to carry that alone," I said softly. A faint, relieved smile touched his lips, the kind that only comes when someone finally releases a secret they've held too long. "I know," he whispered, "and I'm not anymore." He closed his notebook slowly, as if sealing away the last chapter of something painful. "I'm getting help. I'm actually doing better. I just wanted you to know what your kindness did." My chest felt warm, emotional in a way I hadn't anticipated. "You're strong, Elliot," I said. "Stronger than you give yourself credit for." He gave a humble shrug, then straightened a little, as though the confession had lifted something heavy from his shoulders. There was a long, quiet pause. Not awkward, not tense, just full of a soft gratitude neither of us had the perfect words for. "I guess that's it," he said quietly. "That's what I stayed to tell you." I nodded, my voice warm. "And I'm glad you did." He took a step back toward the door, but before leaving, he looked at me with one last, sincere expression. "You saved me from making the worst decision of my life, just by caring for 10 seconds. His voice didn't crack. Mine almost did. "Take care of yourself," I whispered. He nodded. "I am, and I will." Then, with a quiet breath, he walked toward the doorway, but paused in the frame. "I won't forget this," he said softly. "Or you." And then he was gone, leaving the room impossibly quiet, but no longer heavy, just filled with the quiet echo of a moment that mattered more than either of us realized. After Elliot walked out of the classroom, the door eased shut behind him with a soft click. The hall outside was silent. Students long gone, footsteps faded, the whole building settling into its late afternoon hush. But inside that room, something still pulsed. Not tension, not fear, just the quiet hum of truth, raw, honest, and unexpectedly life-changing. I sank slowly into the front row chair, letting my hands rest on the desk, the same desk he stood beside moments earlier, gripping it like an anchor while finally speaking the words he'd kept buried. For the first time since the term began, I let myself really breathe. Not the rushed breaths of grading papers, not the shallow breaths of managing deadlines, not the automatic breaths of routine. A real breath, deep, full, because his confession cracked something open, not in him, in me. I'd been teaching for years, but somewhere along the way, I forgot the power of the small things. A question, a moment of eye contact, a little concern in your voice. 10 seconds. Sometimes that's all it takes. I thought back to that day weeks ago. The day his shoulders looked tense, his eyes tired. I almost didn't say anything. I almost let him walk out without asking if he was all right. Almost. And if I hadn't asked? I shuddered to think where he might be now. The sunlight shifted on the wall, warm and golden, catching the dust in soft motion. And I realized something. Teaching wasn't about lectures, or assignments, or grades. It was about seeing people, really seeing them. And that realization changed something in me that night. Quietly, but profoundly. I gathered my things, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my chest like a warm stone. When I stepped into the hallway, the air felt different, lighter, softer. And as I walked toward my office, I found myself smiling. A small, private smile that came from knowing something rare. That for one brief moment in this world, my presence mattered. Not because of authority, not because of position, but because I chose to care. And that choice gave someone enough hope to keep going. That night, as I locked up my classroom, I caught one last glimpse of the empty desks, the quiet witnesses to everything spoken and unspoken that day. I whispered, almost to myself, sometimes we save people without even realizing it. And as I stepped outside into the evening air, I carried Elliot's words with me, a reminder I would never forget. "You're the reason I'm still here." A sentence that changed him, and somehow changed me too. In the days that followed, I found myself replaying that afternoon more than once. Not out of worry, not out of fear, but out of quiet gratitude. You never know the weight someone carries. You never know the storm behind someone's calm expression. And you never know how deeply a single moment of kindness can reach. Elliot returned to class the next week smiling, genuinely, fully, in a way I hadn't seen him smile before. He participated, he laughed with his classmates, he asked thoughtful questions that reminded me of the bright young man he truly was. And every so often, he'd meet my eyes with a calm, knowing nod. Not a secret, not a burden. Just a silent acknowledgement of the moment we shared, the moment that mattered. There was no tension, no heaviness, only mutual respect and quiet understanding. He healed, I grew, and our paths continued, changed in small but meaningful ways. Months later, I would still think about that day, not with shock anymore, but with warmth. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments aren't dramatic or loud. Sometimes they're simple. A conversation after class, a question asked at the right time, a young man choosing to stay and speak instead of walking away. Sometimes that's all it takes to save a life. And sometimes that's all it takes to remind you why you're here, why you do what you do, why your presence matters more than you realize. As I turned off the lights one quiet evening and closed the classroom door behind me, I whispered a small thank you to the empty room for reminding me that kindness still matters. And with that, the story gently closed. Not with a twist, not with a shock, but with something far more powerful: hope.